In this lesson, we're going to learn all about annotating and noting our Dynamo graphs. By the end of this lesson, you're going to know all the various shortcuts available to you to annotate your Dynamo graphs. You're going to gain an understanding of color coding your Dynamo graphs, and we're going to learn a bit about adding notes to the graphs as well. By the end of this lesson, you should have an understanding of the importance of annotating your Dynamo graphs as you're working through them. With that in mind, let's get right into it. For this lesson, we're going to go ahead and open up the graph from our previous lesson, your first Dynamo graph. If you don't have it handy, it is included in the dataset titled 2.3 Clean Code Process Begin, and that's the file that I'm going to be opening now. We'll just navigate and open the file. As you may recall, this file only has a few nodes in it. It has a number slider, a number node, an addition node, and a watch node. We have a very simple algorithm happening right in Dynamo at this point. What we want to do is we want to start to group together these nodes to indicate what they're doing to ourselves or to a user of this graph if we hand it along to somebody. So in Dynamo, there are various ways to add groups. We can simply select two sets of nodes, a node or one or more nodes. We can navigate to Edit, Create Group. By default, Dynamo gives you a group color, in this case green, with a default title and a default description. There are a few other ways to do this as well. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll hit Ctrl Z on our keyboard for undo, and we'll go ahead and select two nodes once again. We'll navigate to Edit, and we'll hover on the Create Group option. We will notice that we have an option here to create a group with a keyboard shortcut. So on our canvas, we can go ahead and press Ctrl G, and that also creates a group. There's one more way to do this that's really handy. So once again, we'll hit undo, select our nodes. If you right click in a blank portion of the canvas, you also have an option in here to create a group. This is the one I use more often than not. We'll go ahead and do that option, and we have a new group created that's green. In this case, groups are collapsible, so in previous versions of Dynamo, this was not the case. In new versions, it is. You can collapse them and expand them, but we can also start to name these groups to make a little more sense. So in this case, we'll go ahead and change the overall name to input. Clicking outside of the group commits that change. We'll click on the description, and we'll say user inputs for algorithm. And now we have a group that indicates what's going on with those nodes. In the case of titles for groups within Dynamo, they do have a limit, so you have to be pretty concise with the title. So if we were to just hold down a key, we will see that it maxes out at a certain point. The description has a little bit more space, and so on. So I like to keep my overall title pretty simple, and then I go into more detail in the description. You can do this however you'd like, but that's kind of the suggestion. In the case of adding more nodes to the group or removing nodes, you can click on any node within the group, right-click on it, navigate to Groups, and remove the node from the group. Really simple. Adding a node to a group is pretty similar. Select the group, select the node, right-click on the node, and we can go to Groups, Add to Group. One of my favorite ways to add nodes to groups, and we'll go ahead and remove this number node, is to actually drag the node directly into the group. As you do that and click outside of it, it does add that node to the group for you. This is new in this version of Dynamo, and it is very handy to be able to add things to groups very quickly. So you'll find yourself doing that quite a bit throughout the rest of these tutorials. Those are the quick group interactions for adding and removing nodes from groups. Let's go ahead and group the rest of this graph just to get this going. This middle portion is an addition node. This is the core function of our algorithm. So I'll go ahead and hit Ctrl G on my keyboard and create a new group. We'll name this calculations. We'll go ahead and say add two numbers together. Once again, very simple graph, but it is giving us that ability to be able to annotate it to tell the user what it is doing. And now we have that one annotated. Keep in mind, if you collapse this group, we will have inputs and outputs on this group because that's what we have going in. the first group only as outputs, so that's what we get when we collapse it. Kind of cool. We'll go ahead and we'll group the last node. In this case, we'll do this with the right click on the canvas, and we'll say create group, and we'll say output. And we'll put the result of our algorithm. In Dynamo, if you have an orange dot on the top of your workspace on the title, that means that you have to save this file. It does not auto-save necessarily, it does a backup, but the orange dot means you have it saved. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll go ahead and save this file. And I'll do a save as, and I'll save this as clean code progress. Hit save. Now you'll see that that orange dot is gone, indicating that the graph has been saved. So with this complete, we do have annotations in our graph to be able to group them and color code them. In the case of color coding our graph, there are a few different strategies. Included in this course is a Dynamo template with various colors that mean different things. That is in the dataset for this lesson, so just ensure that your file is saved, and we'll go ahead and open that now. In my case, it's named _Dynamo template.dyn. We'll go ahead and open it, and we'll see that we have a full template already saved for us. In the case of this template, it has groups and notes in it. It doesn't have any nodes at this time. So we have a gray portion that's for workflow things, purple means input, green means calculations, orange is a change to Revit, blue is for annotations, pink's for general info, and other is kind of just for whatever else you might need. You can modify this as you please and create your own standard or use this one. It's all up to you. In Dynamo, we can actually copy between Dynamo graphs. So what we'll go ahead and do is hit Control-C with this overall group selected. We'll hit Close, navigate back to our progress graph, hit Paste, Control-V on our keyboard. With that complete, we do have that annotation template copied into our graph very quickly. So now, judging by the titles of these color-coded groups, we can start to color code this graph according to these standards. In the case of input, we want to change this to purple. So what we can do is click these three dots. This is called an ellipses button. And we can go ahead and change this to purple. In the case of this template, all the colors available are ones that are right on this ribbon right here available to you. I tend to use the ones that are a little bit lighter just because it's a little more visually pleasing, but you can use whatever you'd like. In the case of calculations, the screen's pretty close, but it is a lighter green, so we'll go ahead and pick that one. And for output, we'll have to see what makes sense here. And I think in this case, we can use either info or other. So we'll go ahead and use info. And now we have those outputs in there. Output would be another good option to include into your template. So think about that as you're working through these lessons as well. Once again, we'll hit save on our keyboard just to make sure this graph's saved. And with this annotation template, I like to put a graph title in here as well. So right now it's a standard title of this course, but what we're able to do is actually title this to make more sense. We'll say 2.2 in progress first algorithm. You can title this and describe this as whatever you'd like. But we'll normally include that. That way when someone opens the graph, they see this right away and they know that there's some things to pay attention to in here. You can of course add more things to this annotation template or take things out, whatever you'd like to do. All right, with that in mind, that's color coding our graph. One more thing that I like to do is add notes to my graph. So these white little squares, those are notes. Those are addable in your graph, very similar to groups. We go to edit, we have an option to create a note. Hovering on this option, we do see that there is a Control-W keyboard shortcut as well. You can use either one you'd want. Go ahead and do that now and we'll place a note. It places just on the canvas for us, kind of in the middle, and we are able to drag this into a group. The group kind of highlights and it will add to the group. Really cool. I like to use this note to indicate what a node might have been previously named if I change the name to indicate what it's supposed to do. Let's go ahead and remove this note from this group and we'll actually drag it to the output. So in the case of watch nodes that we created in the previous lesson, I often name these to make more sense to the end user because watch doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What we could do is double click on the header of the node and change the name. So we'll say result. A renamed node is indicated with a blue dot in the header of the node, and it also tells you it's been renamed from watch. In the case of indicating what this node does or what it was previously named, I tend to like to leave a note to tell people what it was named before. Even though that blue dot's there, it's just kind of an old habit. I also like to use notes to indicate where nodes came from if they're from an external source, which we'll learn about later. So if we double click on the note, we can go ahead and rename it. In this case, I'll make it watch. We'll drag it over the result and I'll name it watch node. That way someone knows what that previously was. In the case of notes, in addition to being in the group with the node, we can select the node and the note, right click on the note and say pin to node. This is a really great feature because as you move around a node, the note follows. So anytime you're placing a note that's talking about a node, you might want to pin it. Something to keep in mind and is really handy. Additionally, if we collapse groups, that note collapses down with the nodes as well. So really quickly, we are able to start making this graph a little more visually pleasing, but also indicate what each thing's doing to the next user, or to yourself if you create a graph and open it later on down the line. I'm going to hit save again, and now we have a fully annotated Dynamo graph. As a bonus part of this lesson, we're going to look at a way to save our template to make it easier to use throughout these lessons. So in this case, I'll just make sure this graph's saved. I'll click on close on this graph, and we're back on our home screen. For Dynamo files, generally, we're able just to start them with this new option to create a new blank workspace, which we've done this whole time. Or you can create a custom node, which we'll get into later as well. There's no real way to create a template in a similar way as Revit. So you go to Revit, you click on File New, you have an option to create it from a template. Dynamo doesn't have this. However, what Dynamo does have is a really robust section of sample files. All these sample files are great to go through, and I highly encourage you to go through these as you have time. But what this does have is a samples folder available to us as well. This samples folder is really cool because it has all the files in here for us to be able to take a peek at and learn from, but we can also add our own files to this folder. So what I like to do is I'll right click in this folder, click on new folder, type in _templates. That way it's at the top. And now I have a place to save Dynamo templates. So you can save templates for different workflows. If you have a workflow that works with Excel, you can have Excel nodes already in there. If you have something that creates Revit families, you can have that in there as well, and so on. In this case, we kind of have our standard template. So what we'll do is, once again, it's included in the data set for this lesson. We'll just copy this right over to the templates folder. And with that complete, whenever we refresh Dynamo, so I'll go ahead and click close on Dynamo, navigate to the Manage tab in Revit, click on Dynamo again. We will have access to a templates file now. Let's see. So right within our samples folder, it's actually down on the bottom, we are able to click on this Dynamo template file. It will open it, and now we're able to do a save as for this. So this is really handy. You can also make that template read only, so that way you don't change it by accident. But it's really nice because all this stuff's already pre-baked in for me. So if I were to be continuing with this lesson, I would end up doing a save as, navigate to my samples folder, and I would save this file as whatever I'm working on. In this case, I'll do 2.3 sample, just for this example. And now we can kind of keep on working with your template that you started from, and you're good to go. So with that complete, we fully annotated our Dynamo graph. We added groups that are color-coded. We added nodes to the graph. We pinned those nodes to nodes, and we renamed a few nodes. We also learned a little bit about Dynamo templates and where we can store those and use them. So with that in mind, I encourage you to think about what other things you would include in a Dynamo template. Do you include other nodes, other groups? Would you include
less things or more things than are already in the template provided, let us know. But other than that, we will be using the template for the rest of this course. So with that in mind, we'll continue with that clean code strategy for the rest of the lessons.